the previous video, this image was the final result of animation. In this video, we'll look specifically at the individual graphics. Since we need to translate this course, the words in the graphics must be translated. Therefore, we must determine how many graphics need translation, what file types are these graphics, are they editable, and who will edit these files. As you can easily see, there are 7 graphics with words that must be translated. Remember, in the static image, you cannot see this. What type are these graphics? If this question stumps you, or you do not know why it matters, you're in a bit of trouble. How will you manage the translation if you don't understand the requirements? Are the graphic files editable? If you are stumped by the last question, you'll also be stumped by this one. For example, if the images are JPEGs, GIFs, or PNGs, they will be much harder to edit since the text cannot be edited directly. That means you must basically cover the text in the image and then insert the new text. This requires some skill as a graphic artist if you don't want it to look like you stuck a Band-Aid on it. Comparing this image to the original image, notice how the words no longer fit nicely when they are translated. This image was not designed for Spanish. Honey in Spanish contains less characters. Fair trade in Spanish expands considerably. You need to rethink the font sizes. Also, in the original image, the words curved with the jar. You can't do this easily in a text box. You need graphic software to reproduce this. Besides the honey jar, price controls shows perspective and contour. Supermarket has perspective. Cost is particularly tricky. It is warped and a hand partially covers it. Ideally, you need access to the source files. These are the software files in which the image originally was created, like Photoshop, Illustrator, or any other graphic software. Some people use PowerPoint to create graphics. Although the actual PowerPoint file is editable, it isn't ideal for graphic design, and the image still must be exported in a graphic file format. Who will edit these files? Maybe you are completely comfortable with all these questions and can answer easy peasy. I will. A lot of other people will be saying, I don't know. Many translation services offer graphic services. But if you don't have the source files, the editing is more complicated. That will cost more. You might have a graphic artist on site who can do the work for you. Regardless of who does it, you need to make sure that these images are identified as needing translation. There are 2 ways to address text and graphics, but it requires planning and designing your materials before you begin translation. The simplest solution is to avoid embedding text and graphics altogether. If you must label the graphic, use the text box feature in the software and place labels on the graphics. Better yet, use images to convey the meaning of the graphic. For example, the cost lady could be squeezing generic money. Honey could be depicted by a larger picture of a honeycomb and a bee. If you must have text embedded in the graphics, then you need to have the source files with editable text layers. If someone else creates your graphic initially, request that the original source files are delivered, such as Photoshop or Illustrator. Even if you can't edit them yourself, someone else with the correct software can. Remember, If the graphics are created specifically for your company, you own that graphic, not the artist. It's always best to plan your document or courses as if they'll be translated. Other best practices for graphics include avoiding embedding text in graphics, using images to convey meaning, and if you must have text in the graphics, using the text box features in the software so that the text can be easily extracted, translated, and replaced. If the graphics already exist, identify all the graphics and text that needs to be translated. Determine the file types for the graphics and if they are editable. And finally, determine who will add the translations to these files and replace them in the software. Stay tuned for the next video in the series, Best Practices for Slides. Thanks for watching.